What you are listening to is real. The parties involved are not cool. They are actual geeks with a case pending in the court of public opinion. The party's case has been dismissed, and the dispute will be settled here on our podcast. There will be no lawyers. There will be no witness testimony. The judge's decisions are final.
Hello, I'm Judge Ivan.
I'm Judge Jonathan, and this is Geeks on Trial. Today's case, Collection Conundrum.
Welcome to Geeks on Trial. This is the podcast where we settle petty disputes between actual geeks over movies, video games, board games, and more. If you'd like to submit your own geeky case for a future episode, you can email us at geeksontrial@gmail.com. You can also support us and the show over at patreon.com/geeksontrial for just a few bucks a month, and you'll receive early access to both our audio and our video episodes before they are released to the general public.
I hate that general public.
If they give us money, I'll like them.
Well, then they become the elite.
Oh,
And that's who I'm about.
And where do the elite go to beat their... Anyway.
Anyway, man, I'm a little bit tired. The two of us, look, it's the start of summertime, right?
Yes.
Technically, is it yet? It is.
Yep.
Maybe.
It's warm.
Soon. And everyone is doing their gallivanting these days.
Oh, so much gallivanting. I gallivanted not so long ago.
You gallivanted, and I want to hear about the gallivanting.
Oh, I gallivanted all the way to our country's, the nation's, the United States capital. I went to Wyoming. No, I went to Washington, D.C. That stands for...
You got me with that one.
Data collection?
I believe
Washington
it's Detective
Data
Comics.
I like that.
I'm more of a Washington Marvel guy, but I get it. So go on.
It's funny. It's funny. It would have been a good transition, but it's fine. So me and my partner Danny went to Washington, D.C. for a long extended weekend. It's a Saturday, a Sunday, and a Monday. And we visited...
Not a Friday, though.
No, we didn't do Friday.
Go on.
Because screw Friday. We ended up... We went to a few Smithsonian museums. We went to the Smithsonian Museum of American History. That's where we saw the ruby slippers from a little movie called Mad Max. No.
Wow.
Wizard of Oz. We saw Ruby's slippers from Wizard of Oz.
Right. Ruby is my favorite character from that movie. Mm-hmm. Underrated character.
They were Dorothy's ruby slippers, and then we saw Bill Nye's jacket, his lab coat.
His jacket's in there now?
His jacket is in there now. It's next to Oscar the Grouch, which is okay. So on a serious note, that section of the museum,
finally we can get serious.
That section of the museum is very it's very hodgepodge. There's no it doesn't go by year, it doesn't go by date or anything. It's just kind of here's some stuff from TV, movies, and music, and it's kind of all over the place. Who else? They had Archie and Edith's chair on display, which was really cool.
Wait, Archie and Edith's chair?
Yep, they're right next to each other with the table in the middle.
I knew Archie's chair was there. I didn't know the old dingbat got a chair.
The old dingbat got her old dingy chair in the museum now.
She had a chair? I thought she had a chair. It was in the kitchen.
It was...
Listen, I didn't write the show. It was made 50 years ago.
Speaking of kitchens, do you know who Julia Child is?
I do.
They have her entire kitchen in the museum, cut from her home, and it's kind of weird. The walls are there. They took her home kitchen, and it's in the museum there. They had Oscar the Grouch from Sesame Street in his can in the museum. And what else do they have there that was of note?
Did they have some Star Trek stuff that you showed me?
They had the Star Trek. The Star Trek stuff was at the Air and Space Museum. They had the original screen-used Enterprise from the 60s version of Star Trek, the original series. And they also had R2-D2 and C-3PO from one of the movies. I'm assuming it was the original. Because he didn't have... Now, okay, let me ask you this question, you fucking nerd.
Whoa!
He didn't have...
Dropping the hard N-bomb. Nerd. I'm talking about nerd. Sorry. Is that too... We're explicit. Go on. It's fine. Everyone knows
He didn't have the red arm in this. When did Red Arm come aboard.
Red Arm is that's not until the new movies. He never had a
So
red arm.
that is newer movies that he has a red arm.
Yeah.
Okay. So this was from I think one of the original 3 movies they had, because I'm assuming they used the same costume in the early days.
I would think they probably had 20 of those things. Like,
you think for like the first movie they did?
Maybe not the first movie. So yeah, I'm just wondering if they give that to them, or if it's like, yeah, we made a replica of it.
I think everything in the Smithsonian is original.
Okay, well, maybe they did.
So, but if they did, like, let's say they had 3 or 4, it might have been like maybe one of the ones that wasn't used as often. But the Smithsonian, I feel like, since they're such a big museum complex, I think they're one of the top 3 like the biggest museums in the world, because there's technically like 12 museums that are part of the Smithsonian. I think they get a little like, they get the extra, they get the cream of the crop, the moi of the movie collection and stuff like that. The moi of the movie collection.
You'd been there once before, right?
Once before, yes.
And I went there once several years ago. I don't think they had a lot of the stuff you're talking about.
Well, when we went 5 years ago, the entertainment area was closed for renovations.
Oh.
And I think it only reopened about a year ago. So we didn't do that entire museum. We did 3 or 4 museums our trip. We did the American History Museum, National Air and Space Museum, the Asian Museum, and the Portrait Museum.
Now which one was your favorite?
I like Air and Space, but half of it was closed. But I do like the Portrait Museum, because I'm more of I like seeing paintings. I like seeing history. Where like the American History Museum, they have a lot of things there that's like, the first car, the first diner was set up. They had the I think it's Woolworths, the Woolworths counter from the where
from the store,
from the I Had a Dream speech, like where they weren't allowed to sit at the counter. I forgot what that's called.
He mentions Woolworths in that speech.
No, but like after the thing, they like it was a coloreds only counter and the whites only counter, and they sat at the whites only counter.
Okay.
And it was a historical counter in a thing. I sound very white right now, but it's fine.
No, it's good. I think listeners probably assume you're black.
They do. Everyone
from
does.
Your voice.
But the
listeners may not know this either, but I'm white, so go on.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I know.
But my favorite museum is probably the Air and Space Museum, because like they have full-size real airplanes in this museum. We saw the Wright brothers, the first airplane ever made, is in this museum, and it's amazing because like this still holds up today. Like from, I don't know, 100 years ago, it's still like active, because like it's the first airplane to ever fly. You would think that would have like crashed or like disintegrated at some point, but no, it's
they spray it down with a lot of preservatives.
Oh yeah, you can't eat it anymore. But one great thing, so we went to the Presidential Portrait Museum, which is part of the Smithsonian National Portrait Museum. We're going through in order from 1 to, what are we at now? 45? 44?
Well, it depends on who you count as a real president.
You.
Then 45.
Okay. So we're going through and we get down. We saw the Obama one, which is amazing. And then we turned the corner and
46. I don't know. Go on.
I don't know. And he's there, Mr. Trump himself, and every other painting. His painting was there.
Okay.
They don't allow him back, and that's.
I assumed it was this. I wasn't sure if it was like a robot or a hologram.
Because I would have kicked him. So. Every other president and past president has a painting there that somebody took time and painted. Not Trump. They have a picture. It is a photograph, but the photograph, because I think people have gone in there and like tried to take it down and deface it. There's ropes around it, so you can't get near Trump's. Every other one you could like get face to face to and like look at. His, you need to be like away from it.
Isn't it wild how Trump just like the same thing happened at Disney World, the Hall of Presidents, which for many years was just, it's where you went to take a 20-minute nap.
Right.
It's just a bunch of boring president robots. But when they made the Trump robot, like people would cheer and other people would boo, and it became just this shit show of partisan fighting.
Because like he's like the first president in history that is like it's either a cult on either side. They either love him or absolutely hate him.
Yeah.
Like every other president's like, okay, he sucks, but whatever. But that's a different topic. But
but that really encapsulates, you being in the heart of America, doesn't it?
Right. It's true. What, Disney or DC?
Disney? Uh-oh. Disney? Oh, I'm starting to see between the lines here. Maybe the corporations are the ones who really own this country.
They do? Wait a minute. I think they do.
DC is a district.
Right. It's not really a state. It's not a town. It's weird because they have their own police. And like we were talking, I'm like, so like, is the president like the mayor of DC? And I'm like, no, they have their own mayor. I'm like, so that's like like, I would be scared to be on the panel or like the board of DC or like the mayor, because like you just answer directly to the president. I think. I don't know how our country actually works.
I believe that is how it works. It is. It's pretty scary. DC is like the president's backyard.
Right.
He runs it out there.
Or he runs around naked constantly.
He's always walking the dog.
But one great thing, like when we went 5 years ago, Trump was president.
I'm confused at what my own things that I'm saying.
I don't know.
That wasn't a joke.
So like when Trump was president, we weren't allowed to approach the White House.
Right.
There was a cinder block wall 3 blocks away that you couldn't even get towards the fence. And there was nobody there. People were like looking at it going, oh, there it is. When we went, I was able to walk right up to the gates of the White House. And like, there's a guy like playing music out front. Like between the last president and this president, it's 2 drastically different scenes of like people and enjoyments.
Yeah. I mean, the last time I was there, I did get to go pretty deep inside. I was up at
You can't say that.
Oh, I went in the Oval Office. I went in the where Nancy Pelosi usually hangs out.
Wait, what day was that?
It was sometime in early January.
Oh boy, do you have to go to court? Shouldn't you be in?
Nobody said anything to me yet.
You see, I mean, you look like somebody who would be there. Shaved head.
Huh?
Uh-huh.
But I do have my Viking helmet over here.
Do you have your fur coat and your like pitchfork and piece of a desk with you?
Yeah.
Anyway,
I got all that.
When you went to DC, do you remember what museums you went to?
I went to a lot of those. I think I definitely did Air and Space and the media one, whatever that was called.
I think that was just the American history.
No,
but
American
it's like,
history, yeah.
I don't know if you're like me at all with museums, but like I'm always like, oh yeah, we can do like 2 museums in one day. Museums take a lot more time than you think.
Yeah, it depends on what the museum is, but yeah, and how much you're willing to. Because some people will just be like, there it is, and then they just walk through till they get to the end like it's a checklist. Like, I finished it.
Like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like there's, okay, there it is. Okay, there, But I like me and Danny, my partner, like we like reading the plaques. We like looking at it. Like I'm there for like the history of it. Like in the Asian History Museum, some of the stuff was made in like year 1. Like you were in the same room as something that was made billions of years ago. Not, I don't know.
Yeah. Which is better than most of the shit we have in America that's from like last week.
Right.
Falling apart already. It doesn't get built the way it used to.
Okay, boomer.
And in some ways, a museum, what's great about a museum, you could say, is it's kind of like a very large collection.
Right. It's a very big collection that it might be outgrowing its building.
Sometimes you have to get new wings installed.
Right.
Or even move things to a whole new museum.
From museum, put them in boxes, and, somebody has to, it gets dusty.
Right.
Like comic books.
It's weird that you said that, but that does relate a little bit to today's case, which now that we've had the fun and glamour of your trip to DC out of the way, we can officially get down to brass tacks and talk about some actual justice and law and order that needs to be dealt out in this country.
Oh, you definitely don't go to DC for that.
No, you do not. You come to Geeks on Trial. Friends, today's case comes to us from the internet. You can find a link in our episode description. Our defendant today is Martina, who is married to her husband, Tyler, And Tyler happens to be a big-time comic book collector. In fact, at the start of their relationship, their marriage, I should say, Tyler said that he had stopped collecting comic books at one point because his collection got out of hand. But Martina is encouraging and says, go ahead, pick it back up. We'll find a place for them as long as it doesn't get too crazy.
Go ahead.
10 years of marriage later, every spare inch of their apartment littered with boxes of comics. They're in filing cabinets. They're on the floor. They're in the closets. They're coming out the wazoo. And Martina is now objecting a little bit to this collection. She thinks mainly on the basis that Tyler is reading a comic once, putting it in storage, and then never taking it out again, essentially. She thinks it's maybe time to start cutting back on the collecting. Now, as dual judges here on Geeks on Trial, it's our job to determine whether this makes Martina the queena of Mina, or if Tyler's desires are better off on fire.
Ooh, I like that one.
Desires being comics.
Oh, you shouldn't burn comics.
Yeah, I guess does the book burning apply to comic books as well?
Oh, I'm sure at one time there was a comic burning thing, because some comics can get dark and unreligious.
Yeah, all those R. Crumb books.
Especially that comic, the one I wrote,
books.
The Anti-Religion Man. That's what it's called.
Anti-Religion Man, yeah, it didn't do very well.
No. They wrote 600 copies, but it didn't do well.
Yeah.
Volumes? 600 volumes. Because I guess a copy would be multiple copies of the first one. So volume.
Sure. Issues, maybe, is what you're looking for?
Yes, I have plenty.
You know who did collect a lot of those was Ricky Gervais. All right. So we're talking about comic book collecting today, and now this is something that could really, I think this is a common issue in almost every nerdy, geeky subculture, because collecting in general really is something that's almost at the core of being a geek, right? I mean, it's almost impossible for me to think of a geeky hobby that doesn't in some way or form include collecting. Now, some things are digital, or
I don't see. To me, collecting, I don't count a digital collection. Like, I have over 10 million games in my Steam library, but I don't count that as a collection because it's non-tangible.
Well, what about this? Because I would even say, I agree, there's two different, it's kind of like a subcategory, but you could, I think the mentality is similar, where even someone who's just like a big movie buff, you could still, in a way, you're collecting the movies you see. It's not, so it is different from actually having a tangible object, but you could kind of boil them both down to the practice of, there are things that you check off a list that you either have or have done, and that's what brings you satisfaction. It's like, I have every comic, or I've seen every movie, or I've been to every whatever
theme
statue
park.
It is, theme park, state. Maybe you're collecting experiences, or there's,
see, like, to me, a collection is very much a thing, an item, a thing that you hang on to, something that, because collecting in the end is about, you collect something and then later on potentially sell it, because you want to keep it in pristine condition and later on, in my brain, sell it down the road or use it again or something like that, which is something that gets brought up in today's case.
That's certainly, I feel like, even if you're someone who has no intention of selling your collection, a big part of having the collection is keeping it in the best condition you can, just in case. Right. Usually, not always. But
I also feel like a collection is like when somebody's like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to sell this down the road, so it has to be pristine." 9 times out of 10 is a lie you tell yourself.
Yeah, that could be true. I mean, I'm sure there are some people who collect stuff just to sell it.
Right.
But that's a different category to me than the people who collect it for the love of the collection.
Right.
What do you collect? Do you collect anything? Have you ever had like a collection, so to
I don't.
speak?
I don't know. Like I have multiple like I'm looking like all my collections are, like around me now, but like I have a vast DVD and Blu-ray collection. But I don't know if like I don't actively like seek out a rare Blu-ray. Like it's a collection
Mm.
because I like movies and I have a lot of them. But I don't like they're not in a case. Like I don't keep the wrapping on them. I don't like it's a usable collection, I guess you would say. Um, Old cameras would be the biggest thing because like I go out and buy like if I go to a flea market and stuff, I will buy an old camera that actually. Well, I could just do this right here.
You're not using one right now? Oh, for
Like
our audio
old
listeners,
cameras.
this is an old camera. What is that? A
It's
16 millimeter?
it's a regular photo camera. It's a
Oh, okay.
medium format Kodak Duplex 2 camera, and the little thing pops up on the top. Look at that.
Oh yeah, look at that. Looks
So
like
yeah,
an old timey thing. It's a little
it is. Yeah,
rectangle.
I think it's probably like 50 years old at this point. I don't know ages, but yeah. So like that would be like my major collection. What about you? What do you collect? I mean, I know, but what do you collect?
Well, it was interesting. When you were discussing before about whether or not the movie collection counts or not. I have seen people in the board game community use a term to distinguish between board game collections and a board game library. And
Okay.
they'll call a library like the games they actually play, as opposed to people who collect tend to, I think often is the case. If you have a collection, it usually is something that just sits on a shelf.
Which I understand that because like I have a lot of books, but I don't collect books.
Right. And like you said with movies, I'm the same way. And you might look at my shelves and say, "Oh, you collect board games." But like you said, I don't feel like it's not like I'm going out on eBay looking for rare board games.
Right.
I have a handful of Nintendo amiibos, but I'm not. I'm not trying to complete my collection of amiibos. I'm not.
Right.
So I don't know if there is anything in my life that I have in a way that's like, oh, I'm organized. I mean, I collect movie ticket stubs. I have
Right.
I have books of movie stubs going back to however long ago, a decade or more, that I started collecting them.
But that like I guess that is a collection, but it's also not a. You're right because like a collection like it you don't have a completed list.
Yeah. I mean, there's different kinds of collections. There's different
Right.
levels. There's different categories. Now, very relevant to today's case, my own father,
Your papa?
he is a comic book collector. At least, actually, he's stopped very recently. But I can talk about it. My dad, since I was a kid, has been a big comic book collector. He has thousands of comics, a lot like Tyler in today's case. And also, kind of similarly, this is a true story. When my mom and dad first got married, or early, maybe before they did, my mom basically said to my dad, you should get a hobby." And the hobby he chose was collecting comic books.
Right.
And because he read them as a kid, I guess. I don't know.
Right.
I've never asked him about it because I don't care. He's a very boring man. But and since then he has for many years, he would go into the comic book store every week, just like many people do, pick up the new releases from the series that interests him. He would read them once, and then he puts them away in a sleeve and in a box, organized, labeled. Eventually, now he has a whole basement basically with a filing system full of boxes of comic books. He has it very poorly organized on a giant Word document that is an absolute nightmare.
Oh, God.
I've tried to help him in the past. He's asked for my assistance in organizing it. It's just like, I'm like, you need a spreadsheet or something. He literally just has a Word doc. It's like written out in some system that only he understands.
Right. Well, I've done that with my DVDs. I bought a scanner gun that's USB, and there's a program, I forgot what it's called, and you scan every barcode on all your DVDs and Blu-rays, and it puts them in order, and it also downloads the IMDb info for said movie, so you can like search and see what movies you have, and it's kind of cool. Haven't done it. Like I have a bunch of movies that I haven't uploaded because I don't want to do it for like, oh, I bought a new movie, let me go home, bloop, and then put it on the shelf.
Yeah, see, I feel like that's kind of like what Letterboxd is too. You know, I know
Yep.
you're saying like, you know, it's digital, is like whether or not it's a collection, but again, I feel like it's in a similar place where
Right.
there's something satisfying to the human brain about making it official and logging it somewhere so you don't forget and being like, I did this thing. It's
Right.
it's on record now.
But just in case I forget my memory someday or whatever, I can be like, oh, look, I saw this movie on June, whatever. And yeah.
Yeah, that's what I love that's what I do with my stubs is I'll flip it
Now,
open.
one good thing about a comic collection. Now, your dad, I've seen a portion of this comic collection years ago. And me and your dad hang out. We exchange emails. We go to comic book cons all the time.
Yeah.
Comic
love
book
those
cons, not Comic Con.
book cons. You really love them.
So a comic is what would you say, like 8 inches by like 4, and it's very.
Yeah, they're yeah. I would say they're more like maybe 15 or 16 inches. They're huge. Sorry. I'm just saying. To me, that looks more like 15 or 16. Like,
wow. Oh,
I would say 8 inches is maybe half of a comic book length.
Oh, so do you measure where? How far back do you measure?
You start from the base,
right? But where to you is the base?
Oh, like you're holding the comic out with your arm, and you kind of start like down at the arm.
Oh, you start at the elbow and then go all the way to the tip of the comic.
You're holding from your hand at the edge.
Okay, no, you filthy animal. So a comic, like some people like okay, Jay Leno. Jay Leno collects. Jay, hello. I killed Jay Leno. Jay Leno collects classic cars. That is a much bigger thing to collect.
Yeah, well, that's a big thing. Like the you can collect many things, but certain things take up more space than others.
Right. And comics and like my DVD collection, a DVD doesn't take up that much space. But because you have a board game library collection versus your DVD collection, I'm sure you have more DVDs than board games, yet your board games take up an entire wall of your apartment.
Yeah, that is true. Now, we are also not, I'm sure there are those people out there, like with comic books, who might go out every week and literally just buy every new Blu-ray.
True. Yeah.
Like, so that if you're really into it, that could add up quick.
Well, that's it. Yeah, because so let's bring your father into this again. Does
Hold
he?
on, let me get him on the line. Hey!
Oh no! You shouldn't talk to your father like that. Hi, sir. So, what comics do you collect?
Oh, everything.
Oh, okay, thank you. Have a good day. Happy Father's Day.
I'll translate for my dad.
So, does he collect every comic, or like most collectors, does he have like a specific?
He is
story?
A DC guy.
Okay.
Like you he would love your trip to Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Because yes, he's a DC guy. His main things are Superman and Batman.
Okay.
He will branch out into other areas too, but he will do, at least like I said, he actually his comic book store that he used to go to shut down a year or two ago, and that was basically because he had such a good relationship with those store owners that he went in there every week. They knew him by name. They would tell him stuff was coming in. So he kind of took that as his sign to just bow out.
Oh, that's sad.
Sad. But they've been running this shop for years and years. But yeah, that he would though, for certain series and those issues, there's variants that come out. So like one comic will come out, but then there's 4 alternate covers. Or maybe there's a first edition. Maybe there's a signed copy.
Would he buy them all?
Yeah, he'd buy them all. So, because you never know, one of those is going to be the one that's worth $1 million someday.
Well, that's my thing. Okay, so does your father collect them for resale value later on down the line, or is it just because he can collect them?
So it's a good question. I don't know initially what the impetus was. I don't think he was like, oh, this is for the maybe partially, but he also does just genuinely enjoy reading comics.
Right.
But at some point, certainly it became, if and when he leaves this earthly coil.
Mm-hmm.
That's not exactly how that phrase goes.
No, when he dies.
That's what it is.
That's
when he kicks the bucket, he would leave his collection to me and my sister. My sister and I. My sister and me.
Mm-hmm. Good show on Nickelodeon in the 90s. Yep.
And so, you know, that's certainly became a part of it, is like, this will be whatever the money you can get for this. He's assuming my sister and I will sell that collection,
right,
the way perhaps Martina wants Tyler to do.
Right. And I guess in a sense, like comics, we don't know how many comics he reads per month. If it's like, okay, it's just the baseline Spider-Man comic, fine. It's one comic, maybe 3 a week or a month. Are comics weekly or monthly?
Comics are weekly, so it sounds like he's going every week to pick up at least a few comics. But
so if you think about that, that's maybe like 12 comics a month. That's
easily.
Not terrible. That's not, because if you think about it, that's, you know, about that many comics. About 12. That's about 12 inches worth of comic.
Yeah, that's about 12 inches you're holding up with your fingers. People can see. It can add up. I mean, it depends. And that's now an average comic these days, I want to say, is $3.99, but they maybe even be $4.99 sometimes now.
I think it depends. Yeah, between like $3 and $5.
So, you're spending at least $50 a month, but you could easily do double that if you're, depending on how much you're collecting. I mean, or more. Like it wouldn't be hard.
And plus, you know, the backing, the bags, and the boxes are also in that credit, that money as well.
Right. Oh yeah. Right. You got to pay for the boxes. You got to pay for all the storage solutions too. That's for sure.
Because I think the local comic book shop when I was in high school, the one in Comic Fortress, it's you buy the comic, then the bag is 25 cents, and the backing is like 10 cents. Because I would have them bag it and box it right there, instead of me buying a whole bunch of stuff and doing it myself, because I'm lazy.
Yeah, I mean, why not? You might as well get that done. I'm sure you could probably go on Amazon and order in bulk, and it'd be cheaper.
Go to Costco.
They're not in terms of expense, any hobby can be expensive if you're collecting stuff. I don't think comics are the most expensive, nor the most space take up or
Yep.
But again, like any hobby, they can be. Like it depends on how extreme you get. And especially because, you know, it may not seem like so much here, so much there when you're buying them, but you're thinking about, are these comics going on shelves? Some of them are in boxes, they're in cabinets. It can get out of control. You do that for a few years, it can get out of control.
Right, because if you buy, let's say, 10 comics a month for a year, that's 120 comics every year, and that's, I don't know how big those boxes are. Like that might be a box a year.
Yeah, I have a few myself.
Me too, but I can't actually remember how big they are. But yeah, that could be like one box every year, and they're very heavy because paper is dense. So that can take up room, but like once again, we don't know how many comics at a pop he's buying.
But we know there's a lot now.
There's a lot now. So let me bring this into the real world situation. You have a massive board game library.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Now, calm down. Where do you measure from again? Anyway,
it's at least 16 inches of board games.
At least 16 inches. So if someone were to come into your life, a significant other, a partner, whatever, and said,
I'd like to see him try.
You know, there's a lot of room here. This takes up a wall. Why don't you sell some of your collection? Would you?
Well, I mean, I kind of beat them to it, because I already a year or two ago went through that myself, of deciding I have too many board games. I got to get rid of a bunch of them.
Well, I feel like that was different, because like a lot of those games they were yours, but they weren't like games that you played often, or like games that you had any attachment to.
Sure. Well, I feel like that's the point. Is I think that's what happens with a collection is you usually it's different. It's hard to compare because it's different for every kind of collection. Is not one to one, but you only have so much time to play so many board games. So at a certain point, I was like, well, these can go in the closet because they don't come out that much. And then you're like, well, if it's in the closet, what do I really need it? Or I have 4 deck building games. Do I need 4 deck building games? Or maybe I'll only need 1.
Like Love Letter. Like, okay, I have 3 skinned versions of this game. It's the same game. Do I really need to have,
Yeah. Or like,
I get that.
How big is this game to, is it worth the amount of shelf real estate it takes up? And that's part of the argument here is a comic collection more or less valid? Would it be better for Martina if Tyler was every week actually going back and reading old comics and referencing them and making use of them?
Right.
I don't know, because that's such a... that's a hard thing. Like, I have a lot of, like you said, we have a lot of movies, but how often are you going back and watching an old movie? Maybe you are, maybe fairly often.
Well, that's the thing too with my movie library or movie collection. For a while, I would just kind of just go buy movies. I'd be like, oh, I'll watch this. This might be funny. And like, I would be buying like 5 or 6 movies a month or more. But now it's like, I'm only buying Criterion Collection movies. I'm only buying movies that I actually love and that I want to own, because now in a digital age, we can get movies anywhere online.
Yeah, I've come to a pretty similar place to you on that front. But I also think movies are more... A movie is more rewatchable to me. It's a complete story, usually from start to finish. It's very rare, I think, that you're going to be like, I feel like reading issue 384 of Spider-Man today. It's like there's probably certain story arcs that you might go back to, like the major ones out of nostalgia, but because they come out so frequently and because they're all ongoing, at least I'm thinking about superheroes here primarily, which is the bulk of most, if you're collecting comics, that's probably what you're doing. They are more, I don't really want to use this word, but they are more disposable a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Also a lot of the times in comics, stuff will just happen and then gets undone or doesn't matter.
It's filler.
Now, I'm also thinking of modern comics because there might be people who strictly collect classic comics that are going to be worth a lot more, and maybe at least today, looking back, feel like they have more cultural value to them.
Now, let me ask you this question that we've brought up before, either on the show or in real life. Books.
Check them out.
Can you read? No.
It's hard, but
when I read a book, because it's so rare now that I actually have time to read a book, or, the ADD doesn't kick in. When I read a book, I want the physical copy, depending on what the book is, because it's like a trophy to me. I finished this book, let me put it on my bookshelf, and there it is. Would you feel the same way about books as you would with comics? Like, would you eventually let me throw these books away?
Well, that is...
or sell them.
You're asking me about books now in general.
Right.
I mean, books v comic books, there's definitely thoughts there. 'Cause I did get rid of some of my books also, not that long ago. Mainly just older stuff that I realized I'm never going to read this again.
Or like childhood books.
Yeah, stuff like that I was just like, do I really love it? But most of it, though, it comes down to space. Because in a theoretical world where I just had a unlimited giant storage area, I probably would never get rid of anything.
Well, that's the other thing too. And so you live you're not in a house. So you have storage problems, let's say. Would you ever consider getting a storage unit? Or do you think at that point you'd be putting it away is basically, I'm never playing this?
Yeah, I'm not. I'm at least where I am right now in my life. I'm like, if I'm gonna put it in a unit, get rid of it. I don't need it that bad.
Speaking of units, so where do you measure from? So
I would start from mostly towards the
hammer end.
Yeah, like a few feet past the hammer.
Past the hammer. Okay. So because I have a storage unit, but that's because I have furniture for a future home. And we have stuff in there that okay, we are going to use eventually. But you're right though. Like if I were to put my DVDs in a storage unit, I'm not watching those again.
Right. Yeah. You
Um,
make that choice. And now you kind of touched on a little bit the idea of digital for books as well. And that is something for comics that's a possibility. There are digital comics. I do feel that the much different, whereas an ebook to me, sure, you can make an argument it's not the same as reading a real book, but it's a much better approximation in my opinion than a digital comic. That's hard. That's to me very different. I almost don't want to read a digital comic over
because a digital comic, in maybe if it was before the age of web comics, it would have been different. But now with like if you read a digital comic, like a digital version of a comic book through I forgot the one website, Comicology or something like that, it feels like, oh, I'm just reading a web comic. Why am I paying for this?
maybe that's part of it. Yeah, there's a psychological thing of I should be paying less. Well, they do have some subscription services now.
They do.
Marvel and DC both have that, but that is a potential space saver. But then it's like kind of like you said, what are you collecting? Especially if it's a subscription service, then it's presumably like Netflix, they can yank it from you anytime you stop paying.
Right. But like your father has the mindset now in his older age that he will potentially sell these or pass them along to you for either a collection or selling or whatever. So there's an investment in it where like if you collect something digital, at that point it is literally disposable media.
Oh yeah, there's no
because like it's not saved to your hard drive. Your hard drive dies. You don't have this digital medium. You don't have this thing. It's non-tangible. It's a non-tangible object.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up because what I really want to talk about today is what I think is maybe the future in many ways and could directly address this issue. It's a little thing called NFTs. Have you heard of those?
No, please inform me.
Well, do you know how all your tokens that you have are fungible and you hate that?
Oh, what's a token?
Exactly. But these new tokens, none of that business. You cannot funge them for shit.
Oh, so I can't funge them. No, non-fungible?
That's what's probably could help.
How much money would I have to pay to funge these?
All of it.
All of it?
You will have to pay all of your money.
All of my money. No,
you'll get it back though.
Will I?
I will. I'll send you a link later.
Oh, and what if I lose that link? Is it still fungible?
The link is fungible. Unfortunately, that's the one thing we haven't been able to conquer yet. It's all in the blockchain. I'll tell you about it tomorrow. But
what's a blockchain? Is that like a Bitcoin?
It's sort of like a Bitcoin, which is kind of like a Dogecoin.
Oh.
Which is a little bit like real money, but not.
What's money?
I think we should get back to the case at hand here directly, and
okay.
We need to decide. Well, at what point is it okay to say to your SO, "Get this SO of here"? I tried.
Now,
is there a point where it's justified to be like, "Look, I know this is your hobby. I know you like it, but come on."
But so in my opinion, there's a difference. If your hobby and your collection turns into hoarding, that's different.
Where's that line? That line's different for everybody, I think.
See, in my opinion, a collection and hoarding is so he has a distinct thing that he is collecting. He is taking time and putting them into a bags, where a hoarder is somebody who's like, oh yeah, I'm just saving this pile of magazines that I might read someday. And it's not in a box. It's not cataloged. It's not, meticulously put away. What just sounds like, he has filing cabinets. He has boxes. He has whatever. I would let him do that. I would be like, fine, as long as it's not, it's not an expensive thing. Like he's not going out and buying a Ferrari every time it comes out. It's a relatively cheap-ish collection. It's, it might take up room, but that's something where you like talk as a couple, like, okay, we might have spend a few $100s every month and let's get a storage unit, or talk to the landlord and be like, hey, can we use the attic or the basement to store this kind of stuff? Because a comic collection, it may take up space, but it's not an unwieldy amount of space. It's not like you're collecting major things. Like you're not collecting computers or arcade machines or something that take up full rooms. So to me, like a comic collection, a stamp collection, a coin collection, those are small collections, and they're not annoying. They're not, they're not like Funko Pop collections where it's like a large thing.
I do think the like a stamp collection could literally fit in a book. You know what I mean? Like the comics, the space is the real issue here. I mean, that can get unwieldy as it has in this scenario. But I mean, like you said, there are certainly solutions. There are certainly compromises. But I mean, there's got to be a limit for you somewhere, though. Like, there's got to be a limit where you don't have a couch anymore. You sit on comic book boxes.
Oh, absolutely. But that's where you start thinking of a storage unit.
Okay.
Like, that's literally what those are for. And my thing is, if he is enjoying reading them and actually is opening the books and turning the pages every week, that's fine. But if he's just, let me go buy this Batman comic, put it right in the box and never reads it, that's a problem.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Because like he is, this is his entertainment. Like when you do a budget, you have to slot in like your entertainment budget. This is his enjoyment. Now, it did say that does she have any kind of hobbies or anything, or that just never came up in the story?
No, she just sits at home and stares at a blank wall,
which is covered in comic books.
It is? Oh, right. Sorry. I thought you meant that staring at a blank wall was that subject matter was covered in comic books.
I mean, I'm sure at some point, some comic somewhere was.
Yeah, Blank Wall Man.
Oh, huh.
I believe was the nemesis to Anti-Religion Man.
It's true. They fought, and it was a 12 comic arc.
Yeah, it's an arc. You're right.
Yeah.
There's an arch nemesis.
Well, it's also we invited Archie from the Archie comics into it. Jughead.
You made it work.
Veronica? Is Veronica from the Archieverse?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That is one of them.
Continue.
Yeah, Betty.
Betty.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with you.
Betty.
He's getting some entertainment out of it. It's honestly is a hard thing for me because obviously I don't want to stifle anybody and be like, don't collect the thing that you enjoy collecting. I understand it as a geek. I get that urge to want to do that, and it makes you happy. And again, there are far more expensive, far more outlandish and stupid things you can collect. If this case was about Funko Pops, I'd be throwing the book at him in a minute. But
and that's the other thing. It sounds like he's collecting new comics, so he's not going out and getting the first comic and spending like $100,000 or having them graded and all that stuff, which costs
at least not
quite
that we're hearing about. Yeah, I don't know. That could be part of it. Like again, like my dad kind of does both. Like he mainly, he'll get the week to week because they're easier to access, but he will go on eBay and he'll pay some here and there for an old Batman or whatever if it shows up.
Now, I don't know if either your father or Tyler does this, but do they just buy a single version, or do they buy one to read, one to put away?
Oh, my dad just does one. Yeah,
that makes sense. Like if he was getting double, that would be insane.
That's another level of intensity. There's also like, for me, I've also come to a place where, I mean, this doesn't always happen, only for the more popular comics, but I'm a fan of the collected graphic novels. Not even necessarily a graphic novel, but just like when they start putting 6 issues in one paperback.
Right. It's easier to read too, because I'm one of those people who doesn't like cliffhangers or waiting. So if I could like binge read a whole bunch of comics, that would be enjoyable.
Yeah, so that's I don't know if that really helps your space issue or your money issue, but
Now I was thinking as you were talking, I wasn't listening. If he's okay, fine. So like maybe he collects 10 different series. If there's a series that he maybe doesn't fully enjoy, maybe go back and willingly sell, put the wife girlfriend at bay and be like, listen, I'll sell one of these series and maybe free up some space, but I'm going to keep collecting 1 through 9 and I'll get rid of 10.
Yeah.
There has to be some compromise to any relationship, but like to be like, hey, I don't want you to do this anymore. It's taking up too much space. Get rid of all, 400 boxes you have sitting here.
Right. Which I don't think is what Martina is saying. She's just saying like, what's the end game here? I think she's looking around and saying, where does this stop? Because we're getting to the point where we might be hitting critical mass on this, and are you going to sell these? And he says no, he's no plans to sell any of them ever. But yeah, like you said, maybe you can narrow it down to some of your favorites only, like
Right.
the ones that really mean the most to you, or maybe another option that, again, kind of doesn't, it helps in one way but not in another. If the issue is that he doesn't use the old ones, maybe you can find some kind of way to, maybe you start an Instagram account or something, and you actually take those old comics out, post pictures of them, or you write a blog about them, or
Right. Do a
something to
YouTube
make
video,
use of them. Yeah, like
but
make
don't
it
make
more
a
of a hobby.
podcast.
No,
No,
that's already covered.
there's too many. No, no more podcasts, please.
We're the last one. We got right in at the end of the line.
Yep. Now, and another thing I was thinking of too is like, okay, I think you, what is he, like 38?
They're in their 30s or something. Yeah.
There could be a potential of having a family, children. Maybe he wants to share his hobby down the line with the wee one, and they could read comics
Wee
together.
Man?
In that case, yep, from Jackass.
Jackass.
Yeah, that could be another thing too. Like, okay, fine, because I'm sure you've enjoyed your dad's comic collection, or is it like you're not touching these?
I don't really touch the ones he collects, but
Okay.
he used to for many years. Like, he knows that I like Spider-Man. He's not really a Marvel guy, whereas I am.
Mhm.
So like, he would buy some Spider-Man comics just for me to read. Then he would put them into his collection.
Okay. Well, hold on to them for you.
Yeah, and I have some too, or like some Star Wars comics or some other stuff that he knows that I would be interested in, that
Right.
he probably wouldn't buy. But like, I mean, I don't know, if I really asked him and I was like, "Can I read some of these comics?" I'm sure he would let me. He'd just say, "Be careful." Although there's probably some he has. He does have a few that are like vintage comics that he's like,
Right.
you're not touching those ones.
Which makes sense, because like you don't want to get the oils of your dirty hands on there because you don't wash your hands.
Yes. Well, if I'm reading a comic, it usually means that I am masturbating, and
Right.
the pages will get stuck together.
Very sticky. Well, turn the page, you wash your hands.
Yeah, I never saw that episode of Rocco, so I missed that.
Oh, it wasn't from Rocco. That's just my saying.
Oh, that's just you
You
saying?
turn the page, you wash your hands. What is Rocco?
I think I have a verdict for this.
Ooh, okay. So do I, but I'm interested to hear what yours might be.
Okay.
So what are we? Give me the breakdown. What are we?
We are deciding, is Martina in the wrong for saying to her husband, "It's don't you think it's time to cull this collection a little bit, or just to maybe cut it off or minimize it going forward?"
Okay.
And I am someone who, I sympathize with Tyler in this situation, and I think it's cool and fun to have a big comic book collection. And it's not the thing that I necessarily do, but I endorse it. And I don't necessarily want him to stop collecting. At the same time, I don't think that Martina is necessarily in the wrong for approaching him about it and wanting to discuss a possible, not an end point, but again, just a trimming down of some kind, or having to think of what a solution maybe could be. And I think there are ways to approach this that would be wrong. And if she had come into this going, you got to stop, that would be one thing. But the way that it's laid out, at least in the case file, it sounds to me like she was pretty level-headed and reasonable and open to solutions. And it doesn't sound like she really made any strong demands or anything like that. So
Right.
from where I'm sitting, while I'm not necessarily siding against Tyler, I also don't really think Martina did anything wrong. So I'm gonna give her a non-guilty verdict.
Okay. I do agree with a lot of what you're saying. She did. Now, did she tell him to get into collecting or doing whatever? Or I might be crossing your story with the case
she
file.
did encourage him to start again.
So
after
she
he'd
did put he was done. He was over. she told him no,
Yes.
it's over. For whatever reason he stopped, and she said, why don't you do that thing you do again? And then he said, okay, let me, call Tom Hanks and we'll do that thing we do again. Right? Isn't that the name of the movie? Whatever.
Yeah.
So she is technically at fault for starting his, we'll call it an addiction again, which is really what a collection is. You're addicted to said comic and he doesn't want to stop. He's getting the itches. But, if it is affecting their home life, like if it's like, oh, I used to have a room to go and relax, but now our bed is made of comic boxes. If, we don't have an ottoman anymore. We now have a long box of comics to put our feet on. Sure, maybe there is an issue there, but it's also something that it sounds like it could be discussed as a couple. Like, okay, fine, cut it down to maybe don't sell your old comics, but maybe cut it down instead of 10, which is a number I think I just made up, 10, do 4 a week. Or only do the big editions or collect books. And, they need to have a sit down and be like, maybe when we get our new place, we want to have a garage, or a shed to put the comics in, or a storage facility to feed and help this this collection, because that's really, that's what you need to do, instead of just being like, sell them. And, because he did say he didn't want to sell them, which I agree with. I get it. Like down the line, like I'm sure your dad doesn't be like, oh, I'm going to sell these tomorrow. He wants to get full value for them. And he wants to walk into this comic fortress and be like, mine, I get it. I'm split. I don't know. I'm very split between the two. I don't want to say I'm
James McAvoy from the film Split.
I'm going to have to side with Martina. That maybe he does need to figure out a way to do something. Maybe not go full on digital, but, she is not guilty. Is that what we said?
All right. So, yeah, I think we're both going with maybe a kind of a soft not guilty.
Right.
It's,
now,
like,
when it's soft, where do you measure from then?
Well, that's... You don't measure even when it's
oh,
soft.
You don't measure when it's soft.
No, it's just best practice to not do it then.
Okay. So what's a good punishment for?
Yeah, we do it. We have to. I mean, the thing is, I'm not really opposed to either of the parties in this case.
Right.
But as judges, it is our official duty now to sentence poor Tyler to some kind of a punishment.
I think Tyler, with all the comic boxes and all the comics he has, the comic boxes are very heavy. They're like bricks. I think he should have to build an add-on to his house to store comics out of comic boxes. He has to make his man cave out of his comics.
Yeah. Okay.
Or you even brought it up. He has to make a hobby out of his hobby. Make your hobby pay for your addiction, so you can buy a storage unit. Do the Instagram, do the Facebook.
Yeah,
something.
Make your hobby self-sustaining. You can only spend as much on comics as you made on sponsored Instagram posts this week.
Right.
Yeah, that could be something. I was trying to come up with some, like, you have to read all your comics with peanut butter on your fingers, but the comics did nothing to deserve that.
At that point, just tell them to throw them in the trash.
Yeah.
Maybe he could also, to earn money, he can go on like Wiki Feet and take pictures with his comics and his feet.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't know. His wife could probably get an OnlyFans started with the comic books.
And have the comics but why can't he? He could probably do it.
Yeah, true. I just think it's easier for the women folk in our modern society.
What are women?
Men are lonelier and more disgusting.
Right.
And easier to manipulate.
Let me introduce a word into
Go
gay.
On. No, I think specifically straight men are lonelier and more disgusting.
Oh, no, I'm pretty lonely and disgusting, and I'm fairly gay.
Well, whether it's
gay
fairly or unfairly is another issue entirely. We have given our verdicts and determinations regarding today's case, but if you're watching or listening to this on YouTube or perhaps on your favorite podcast platform,
boy, he's having a stroke.
Let us know what you think. That's only when I read comics about today's case. If you have a verdict or not.
Oi.
you can send us an email. Our email address is geeksontrial@gmail.com. That's
Right.
also where you can go to submit your own geeky case, which we will deliberate on the very show you are observing. There's also a handy-dandy form in our episode description, so you don't even have to write it all out yourself. The form will tell you exactly what we need to know, and you can get that to us that way.
And hey, me and Jonathan have collections that we need
Jonathan
to
and
pay
I.
money for. And shut up. And I collect these vintage cameras. He collects gavels. And a great way you can help us collect and get more money for collecting is to go to our Patreon. It's patreon.com/geeksontrial. And you can help support the show for just a few bucks a month because this is our job. Help us make a living doing this show that you are enjoying, because enjoying media for free is theft. And would you print a gun?
No. Wait, a gun? Yeah, I
Wasn't
would.
it? What is it? Would you print a...
You really don't remember.
I don't remember what the saying
So would
is.
you download a car is the...
Would you download a car? That's what it is.
Yeah.
Would you?
But print a gun. Yeah, I would down. Of course, everyone would. Every
download
single
2 cars.
person would download a
Every
car.
single... So, where can we find you and your collections at?
If you'd like to hear more of me, you can go to @Quence on Twitter, QUENCE, where I sometimes tweet things. And I've also been collecting experiences of reading Animorphs books over on my Animorphs podcast, which is called The Yerky Boys. You can find that places. How about you?
Oh, well, you can go to my website, it's ivanhan.com, where you can see all of my past, present, and future things that I'm working on and projects. Or you can go on over to The Snack Guy, that's youtube.com/The Snack Guy, where I review and collect snacks. There.
Wow. This is great.
Well, I mean, I guess I don't collect them, I eat them.
You collect them. That's a collection.
Oh.
I love collecting listeners and viewers and friends. So tell your friends, tell them about the show, go review it on iTunes, give us 5 stars, because then we can collect a bigger family and we'd all be happier. And mostly the 2 of us would be happier, but I think you the listeners could too.
Well, if we grow a community, that community could be happy. It could be a happy community of listeners.
It's a long shot, but I think it could happen at some point. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
For listening or watching so much to the Geeks on Trial, which is who we are. And of course, you're going to stay tuned for more right here on this very same spot where you got this one, because we got more geeks coming at you every week.
True.
To be on trial. My name's Jonathan Estes.
And I'm Ivan Hahn.
I got there first.
And we'll catch you next time.